Everyone you meet is facing a battle that you know nothing about. That is a maxim of our times. And it's a maxim, I think, with a real rich insight. It says, be kind to people, because even if you can't see it, even if they've learned to hide it really, really well, everyone is carrying around some stress, some trauma, some hurt, some fear, some pain. Everyone is carrying that around. And now, more than ever, we are aware of the cost of that kind of internal baggage, aren't we? Now more than ever, we are aware of the burden of the mess that we carry around in our minds. And in what is, I think, quite a cruel twist of fate, now more than ever, we are pressed to present perfection. Now more than ever, we're aware of the burden of internal baggage, and we feel the weight of it, and we're sometimes pressed down by it, and now more than ever, we're pressed to present perfection. We're pressed to present not necessarily who we are, really, but who we'd like other people to think that we are, who we might hope that we might be able to be. We can filter our form. We are curators of our character. And in one sense, we're doing this on our phones. A lot of the time we're doing this on our phones. But I think the truth is we've learned as a culture to do it in real life too. Fake it till you make it is another maxim of our times. We have learnt and we are pressed upon, and we are maybe even institutionalized, even though we are carrying huge weight, to present that we are doing great. Philosopher Charles Taylor, so you can Google him if you want, theologian, philosopher, Canadian guy, still with us, 92. A lot of them have passed on. This guy's 92. The wisdom is pouring out of it. What he says about this, he's got a term for it. He calls it the malaise of modernity. When we're told, get this, to be true to ourselves, the message all the time, you do you, be true to yourself, all of these maxims that fill up our minds. But we end up creating, the reality is we end up curating something that is a long way from being true to ourselves. And he makes some really interesting observations about that. We create an identity by defining our own value. He's speaking about our culture now, maybe even the last 50, 60 years. We create an identity by defining our own values and meaning. Yet we feel a crushing burden still to prove our worth, even though we've said we don't believe the rules or we're going to make all of the rules up. We live in a culture that increasingly denies the idea of moral guilt or even moral certainty. Right and wrong are increasingly becoming private matters that we daren't talk about in public, and kind of relative ideas, relative terms. You do you is the big spiritual mantra of our day. And yet, despite the fact that we've written off all the rules and we've changed all the circumstances, this is the malaise that he's talking about. We still feel there is still a reality to our mental health crisis. We still feel more overwhelmed and more with a need to prove ourselves than at any point. We are carrying, I would suggest, we are carrying with us as much as we've ever carried. We are pretending about who we are more than we have ever done. We hide a lot of the time. Even when we publicly post on social media, we're often hiding who we really are. Tim Keller, and here's a quote maybe to put over our talk today. He'd often say this in various ways, and there is a quote that helps identify it. But he says we're never going to find peace by hiding. Think about how often we are hiding in our world. And Tim Keller would say, we are never going to find real peace like that. The way that we'll find real peace is by being fully known. To be loved but not known, so think about Brilliant. Think about this text. To be loved but not known is comforting but shallow. So true, innit? People that love us but don't really know us, it's kind of nice. To be known and not loved, this is the one, isn't it? Is our greatest fear. If we open the doors and let somebody in and then they say, no, I don't want you, that is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and fully loved is what we need more than anything. So even Taylor Swift, I don't know if we've got that quote, she says similarly, the gorgeous, the successful, the powerful, actually, the incredibly talented Taylor Swift, she needs the same thing. One of the lines in her songs says, all of my enemies started out as friends. Who could ever leave me? But who could stay? I've got everything you could want. And yet she's still scared that when people get to know her, even her, with everything that she's got, who's going to stay for that? Psalm 32 is about that issue. So just a little bit of context. Psalm 32, as far as I can figure out, as far as the scholars have guided me, it's kind of the sequel to Psalm 51. Maybe you'll know a little bit about the Psalm of 51. Maybe you'll know a bit about the David and Bathsheba story. Maybe you'll know about what David, having fancied Bathsheba, did to Bathsheba's husband and killed him. This is David after Bathsheba. It's David after Uriah's murder. It's David after the prophet Nathan comes and rebukes him. This is David carrying round, and you can see that in some of the language of the text, the weight of the blood guilt of his scandalous affair and murder of Uriah. This is David carrying all that round and trying to face up to the real him. Not the version of him that is in the mysteries of time, not even the version of him that people would sing, not the celebrity king, not the legends about him. This is David, and Psalms are great for this. This is the real David. This is him internalizing. This is him facing up to the fact that he's not really that legendary king. In fact, he's done a terrible thing. And he's wondering if anyone will like him in this psalm. He's wondering, I think, as well, if he will even be able to look at himself in the mirror. I would say that this problem that we've described is something that we can identify with. Something that we get. If people knew what we were really like, if people really knew what we were really like, we think often, then they wouldn't really like me. You ever thought about that? I think that's an incredibly heavy thing to think about yourself. If people knew what I was really like, they wouldn't really like me. I think it's incredibly heavy, and yet what I'd say is loads of us think like that. Definitely at some point in our life, but some of us have it for a long time. If they really got to know me, what a weight that we put on ourselves. This text, I think, kind of beautifully gets us to consider that what we carry, the weight that we carry around, isn't just emotional, isn't just mental, isn't just circumstantial. The issue for us isn't just all of those things. They might play a big part in it. This text gets us to ask if this issue is a spiritual issue. If the weight that we're carrying around, that we're hiding from, that we're pretending against, is actually a spiritual problem. So you've got three things we're going to see in the psalm really quick. We're going to see the burden that we all carry, how to get it off your back, how to lift it off, and how you walk when you don't have it. The burden you carry, how to get it off your back, and the nice way that you'll walk after you manage it. So the first thing that we'll see is the burden that we all carry. Verse 3 says, such a poet, David, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. Day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Sounds a bit dramatic. And he's got the gift of poetic license as David, but he's not being a drama queen here, I don't think. He's really expressing the pains of his heart. What he's describing is living with suppressed guilt. He's eking out the pain of that. He's describing what it's like to live with bottled up brokenness for a long period of time. He's describing the exhaustion when you try to outperform rather than face the issues in your life. Does that chime with you? Do you have any of that where you just try and constantly outperform the fears or not face them or just ignore them? The holes and the aches, you just put them to one side and instead you go for trying to just be ace. It's exhausting. In Hebrew, it's a real visceral picture of like internal erosion. It's like the idea of somebody that's emotionally wasting away, spiritually wasting away, even physically wasting away. That's what the text says, and we know now how all that stuff overlaps. If we're mentally unwell and mentally exhausted, it takes a physical toll, and that's what David is describing here. I think it's a burden that we all carry around. Psychologists today give it a big name that I had to Google just to, because I thought I knew. You know, you get them phrases on the internet where you think, I think I know what it means. I better just Google it to make sure. Psychologists today call it cognitive dissonance. The pain of living one way while knowing the truth lies somewhere else. The pain of living out one way when you know the truth lies somewhere else. I think that really can chime with us today. When you can smile online at the same time as you can scream or feel low inside. It's the tears of a clown stuff. When you can be in a room that's full, even full of your friends, and you can present happy, but you can feel empty. Psalm 32 is a song and a poem, and like any good song, it gives us the words to help us sing all that out. You read through the Psalms. Psalm 32 is the place to go when you are feeling like this, the ache of that. Go to Psalms. Go to Psalm 32. There is a script there, but it's not just the script. It's the diagnostics of the problem too. It screams at us it's a spiritual issue, because what's actually going on here is whether David can be fully known and fully loved at the same time. And that's not a humanly possible thing. Our phones don't help us to be able to do that. In fact, our phones do the opposite of that kind of thing. They don't help us tell the truth about ourselves necessarily or feel completely loved. Our culture, for all its assertions about you being you and finding yourself, it doesn't seem to me to be helping with that. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we're quite often too scared to go there as well. We don't want to find out all the time what's at the bottom of ourselves. We don't know if we want to be fully known, if we will even love ourselves. And yet this is what we need. And I would say that complex scenario is what makes this ache in our lives not a circumstantial thing, but a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual thing. The greatest film of the 90s, definitely of the 90s, and I know preachers, at this church, preachers say that every week, don't they? The greatest film. The greatest film, greatest film to me of all time. My favorite ever film. I think I'd go as far to say as I've even got a man crush on this guy. He's a legend. Good Will Hunting. Have you seen Matt Damon? Good Will Hunting. Have you seen that film? It's an amazing film. Champions the underdog. And here is probably the climactic scene in the film. It's an incredibly rich scene. Will is this brilliant, like genius, mathematical wonder of a guy, but he is a damaged soul. and he hides it. He hides it behind jokes, bravado, alcohol, intellect, and he sort of makes himself look rock hard, as we would say around here. He makes himself look invincible. But inside, and what's kind of becomes increasingly apparent as the film goes on, is that he's just broken inside. Externally, he is presenting tough. Externally, he's presenting, nothing's going to break me. Inside, he's broken. And you can see in the film how exhausting that is. And then he meets the lovely Robin Williams being Robin Williams. Sean in the film, who's a psychiatrist. And in this really powerful scene, he's confronted with truth and gentleness. There's this refrain that the psychiatrist says to the guy who's repressing all of these feelings. He says to him over and over again, and I'm guessing it's a familiar phrase for psychiatrists. He says, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And as he says this, and as he hugs him and pulls him in and holds him tight, Will starts at last to crumble. And all of his defenses come down, and he starts to cry. He breaks. His walls have been penetrated, not because he's weak. It's a brilliant part of the film. Not because he's found a weakness, but because he feels safe and secure enough to get to the bottom of who he is. He's safe enough to be fully known in the arms of this psychiatrist. And only then can the healing start to begin for him. I've got some bad news for you at the start of summer. If you're a younger person, here's the bad news. And it probably applies if you're an older person. It's just generally bad news for all people. Even those in between, it's kind of bad news. Especially if you're young. And especially with the way that our culture is going at the moment. You've probably got years and years in front of you of pressure to pretend to be somebody. You've got years and years in front of you of a need to pretend, perform, hide who you really are. And if you're an older person, you can look back like me, or those even older than me, look back and ache at the amount of pretending and untruth that they've done. That's the bad news, but there's some good news as well. The good news is that God can hold you like the psychiatrist Robin Williams does there. He can hold you. He can look you in the eye. He can see to the very bottom of you, to the pits, to the worst of you, to actually who you are, and he can reassure you and he can say, I still love you. I'll still die for you. I'd do anything for you. You've got years of pretending in front of you. But you've also got a safe place that's right there. Second thing that we see is how to take the weight off. See verse 5? This is about confession. Part of this psalm is about probably quite a distant idea in Christianity, perhaps, maybe a distant idea for you. Felt a bit distant as I was prepping for it, this word confession. It's a confession that changes everything, that heals him. Then I acknowledged my sin to you. Notice the extent of the confession. Notice how honest it is. Notice how much he owns everything. Then I acknowledged my sin to you. I didn't cover up anything. I didn't cover up my iniquity. Didn't hide anything. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. And what? God completely forgives him. I'd like you just to do a little exercise for me for a second. I'd like you to think about what your processes are when you need to say sorry for something. What is your tactics on apology? And don't lie to yourself that you've not got tactics for apology. My tactics is, no, I've progressed as a human being. Certainly as a younger man, I would give away as little as possible. I would give a little of actual blame away as possible. Lots of emphasis, maybe you've done this, on the mitigating circumstances. I just surround myself with the mitigating circumstances, and then right at the end, just because it needs to be noted that I physically said it, and I'm sorry about that, and then I'm gone out of the room. Gritted teeth. I would suggest that our culture, the culture that we are versed in, shaped by, is fluent in blame culture. And this might be a little bit heavy, but I'm saying it on purpose because I want you to listen. Allergic to ownership of responsibility. Just let that sentence strip over you. We don't easily look at ourselves when things go wrong. I would say you could think of it like that we're shaped to look anywhere else. We're institutionalized to stick the blame on somebody else. Maybe there's part of us that does that, but also we are shoved to blame the weather, the politicians, illness, anything that we can think of, apart from to look at ourselves. And obviously these are all part of the equation. But we are human beings. All of the mitigation doesn't take away ownership of ourselves. We are responsible for ourselves. They don't take away from our agency. Look at David, King David, celebrity king, God's anointed, God's chosen, stuff of legend. He's got a reputation to uphold. He's got a scandal to try and cover up. And yet, what does he do? Nobody would say this today. Nobody in David's position, nobody says this today. Nobody would write this down. Nobody would write a poem or a song about this. David says, all of what you've just said, all of the blame, I can't say there's any mitigation. He doesn't try and negotiate. He doesn't do the short, blunt apology like I can sometimes do. He says, that is all me. He completely owns everything that he did wrong before God. Yep, all me. It's worth just stopping to think how that would go for celebrity kings and princes if they did that today. It's worth just thinking how that would go for you if you did that today. It's worth just thinking how that would play out in your relationships or your friendships and things like that if you just fessed up completely to the things that you'd done wrong. How popular would you be with your internet post saying what you are really like? And we've come to see, I think this is right, to see confession as kind of this oppressive, distant thing, something that can keep us down. It perpetuates the idea that people have got something on us. And I think this is where the gospel, this is where my faith, our faith, is different to everything else. And this psalm really helps us to think about that and articulate that. Because it's at the point of confession, it's at the point where David says, yeah, it's all me. I'm the worst person. I am all of those things that you could think about me. It's at that very point that David is made and established. It's not the breaking of him. It's not the canceling of him. It's the making of him. When he owns up and he says, yes, do you know what? That is actually who I am like. Just notice the depth of the change that goes on in David. Notice how he's transformed. Notice how he moves. It says in verse 5, then I acknowledge my sin to you, did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgression to the Lord. I confess it. And look at this for forgiveness. And then you forgave me for the thing, but not just for the thing. You forgave the guilt of my sin. It's not just the thing that God forgives. It's not just the thing that God takes away like it never happened. Do you see what David joys in here? See how David gets a boost? The guilt is taken away. The guilt's gone. It's incredible, I think. I'm so thankful for that. And this kind of thing, this kind of idea is right, like I've not just pulled it out of this one psalm. This is right throughout the Bible. You read through your Bible, and it's really explicit in Jesus' brother James when he writes his short letter at the end of the Bible. James 5:16 says, confess. This is a verse you'll rush past, and it's probably a verse I'd be scared to preach about, truth be told. James 5:16, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that what? That you might be healed. What a teaching. Speak it out, own it, be honest about it, not just to get it off your chest, but that you might be healed. And I think that as a culture, we know a little bit about the power of this. I don't know if you've heard of Andy's Man Club. There's 101 examples I could have given, but this idea that you talk about who you actually are, what's actually going on with you in a safe space, and you are empowered because of it. It's an empowering thing. It's a brilliant thing to be in the room of an Andy's Man Club. And in a sense, it's not always, and historically it's definitely gone off the path, but that is exactly what church should be. Shouldn't be a show, I don't think. Shouldn't be a performance. It should be the place where we're able to come together into the room and be really honest about who we are. Really, really honest with each other if we can. But definitely in prayer with God, knowing, and this is the beauty of it, knowing that He will look at us when we come to Him honestly, and He will forgive us and He will accept us how we are. So here's the second bit of wisdom. If you want to be well, if you want to be really, really well, if you want to live the best life, stop pretending. It's exhausting, is pretending. Help me to stop pretending and performing and start confessing, start owning who you actually are before a holy God. The point that you own your sin, the point that you look at who you are and own it, is the very point that it stops owning you, the very point that it stops being a power over you. The last thing that we're going to see is the joy of being really forgiven, which I think when David writes Psalm 51 after what he's done with Bathsheba and what he did to Uriah, I think Joe's preached on this in the past, it's a painful psalm. And you think there's no way through anything like that. And praise God, there is Psalm 32, where there is chinks of light and hope out of the other side. And this is a point I reckon David probably thought in the midst of his sin and mistake that he'd never ever get to. And yet he honestly confesses his sin and he's changed and forgiven. I think that's something that we should all chase and want. Here's what he says in verse 7. And notice how his life's philosophy changes round. How he thinks about everything, how he processes everything changes. You now are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance. I'll read 6 and 7. Therefore, let all the faithful pray to you while you might be found. Surely the rising of mighty waters will not reach them. You're my hiding place. You'll protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance. When we confess, at the point that we confess, when we think that the world would own us after that, we're not owned anymore. At the point that we confess, we stop hiding from our problems, I'd say, from God as well. We stop hiding from all of that and we start to hide in Him. Do you see what the text says? We move from our own self-made ways to cope, our own dodgy DIY defense mechanisms, to God-given refuge. That's what the text says. In practical terms, we go from fear of being exposed, of being seen through, of being found out for who we really are. We go from that hanging over us all the time to a deep, rich, I think verse 1 is what it is, blessed confidence. Because every dark corner of our lives, this is where the confidence comes from, every dark corner has been seen. Every dark corner seen, every dark corner is fully known, every dark corner is fully forgiven, and you're still fully loved. The cross, I think, in all of human history, is the thing that screams this the most, that tries to get us to believe this is actually true, that this might actually be true. Think about what happens when we read about the cross or when we consider the cross of Christ. What essentially is going on is all human failure, all our hidden bits, all the bits that are hanging over us, that lurk over us, are pinned on Him. There's a sense in which He's exposed to all of that when He goes to the cross. puts his hands out, and God sees him, and everything that we've ever done wrong is pinned on him. It's all on him. He absorbs all of that. He takes all of that. He's exposed to all of that, so we can be hidden from the wrath of God from all of that. The cross screams out through human history, something that should be a real comfort to all of us. God says to us on the cross, there's not a single skeleton in your closet. There's not some horrible thing that's not yet seen, that you know about, that nobody else knows about, that I have not seen and has stopped me loving you. The cross shouts, literally in Christ, it shouts to the crowds, I've seen the worst of them, and I'll still love them, and I'll still die for them. And just to wrap up, I think David, towards the end of the psalm, has sort of 2 points of progress that I just want to touch on as lessons, encouragements to you to take away. He stops hiding, he stops pretending, and his message to us is stop hiding, stop pretending, stop performing, and have some confidence in your blessed position. Blessed verse 1, blessed verse 2. David moves from, and it's a beautiful journey, I think. It's a beautiful poem. At the start of the psalm, he's in silence. He's in internal anguish. There's no joy. There's no music. It's like a monologue of fear and doubt and worry and anxiety. One that you might have had. One that I've had. And it's crushing his bones. And he's got this voice rattling round in his head that's telling him he's finished. And he moves from that. Look how incredible the transition is. Tell me if it's something that you'd want. Look at it and go, I could do that. I know what the first part of this transition is. I would really want the second part of this transition. He moves, and I've just lost the verse for a second, but you can find it on the screen. He moves to the sound of God singing over him. He's gone from silence in his own head, a monologue of fear and doubt and heartache, to the music of God ringing in his ears. Not condemning him, but screaming at him. See what the text is about? About how safe he is. That beautiful note about the fact that the waters will rise up. He sort of writes that as we often feel about life. It's going to catch me out at some point. It's going to get me at some point. It's going to rise up and drown me. I'm going to drown in my own mess at some point. And yet, he says, God sings songs to him about how that's not going to happen while God's watching over him. We're moved towards blessing. And I would just put a footnote under that to say that's not, and I'm not like damning on people's social media posts, but it's not the hashtag blessed stuff that we see a lot of. Or maybe even that we pin our hopes on, where we just, something goes right for us and we're like, yeah, this is it. And I'm not kind of ruling out God's hand in any of that. I'm not saying that's not blessing. But what David's talking about here definitely is loads more than just something's gone right. This is lots of things have gone wrong, and yet I am still deeply confident in my heart that God has got me in all of these troubles. It's shalom, peace. It's the mountains can crumble, but I've seen the eternal things of God, and I know that I'm going to be okay. So the first of the last things, stop hiding. Remember your blessed position in God. And the final thing is a funny thing, I think. Not seen much of King David's comedy, but I think he's trying to be funny here. Maybe he is really funny. Maybe he's a reluctant comedian. But when I sort of wrestled with this, and Jude, when she read it, I think she hammed it up a wee bit, but she could have gone all in. And it said in my text, donkey or ass and not horse, which is a bit funnier, I think. And I think that's what David's going for. Verse 8 and 9. I will instruct you, teach you the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. So, and this is David's learnt wisdom, don't be like the horse or the mule. which have no understanding, but must be controlled by the bit and the bridle. You've got to drag it to get it in the right place, or they will not come to you. David's like, I think this is what David's saying. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an ass. Don't be an ass like I've been. Don't know the truth of things and yet not be able to say it. Don't ignore the fact that God knows everything about you and think that life is about pretending to be something else. Don't be an idiot. Don't be like a donkey, because you're never going to get there. Don't need to be dragged. Don't need to get there when you're into your old age and you look back on your life and think, oh, I should have just owned up to this a bit sooner. David's speaking as an older man here, I think, saying, don't, or at least a man who's learnt some stuff along the way, and he looks back and he says, don't be an idiot like me. I know now, it's possible for us to live our whole lives in pretense. It's possible. We could pretend forever. We could hide forever. That's a possibility till we're old of days. But this psalm beautifully reminds us that it's possible at the same time to drop all of that weight, to stop carrying all of that anguish about, to be truthful about who we are, and to swap it. Jesus says beautifully, come and take my yoke. There's this idea with him that we can just drop. Nobody else can say this. Anybody else says this, I don't know what they're going to do to you. I don't know how they're going to help you. But Jesus can come to us and say, just take my yoke. You do not need to carry around all of that pain, all of that fear of failure, all of that fear of being seen through. I've seen you, and I'd still die for you. Do you believe that? Then you can stop pretending.